Mark, that's a rough bit of news over the last week or so, and obviously potential incoming points deduction for Forest. How you feeling about all of that?
Yeah, I guess it's been a couple of weeks. It's sunk in now, and like the football's kind of taken over again because that's got to be the focus because we've got to play our way out of it. But I can't, I can't really going back to how I felt at the time. Incredibly frustrated, quite angry. Really, I've said a few times to a few people we should have been the last club to fall foul of it because it should have been so bloody obvious. Um, so we should have been right on top of it. I mean, it's fair enough if it creeps up on you. Well, it's not really fair enough then, but for us, it was always something that fans from other clubs were shouting at us when we were signing all those players, and we were told in no uncertain terms, "But don't worry, we're on top of it." And then for it to turn out to be not the case and us fall out foul of it is hard to accept. It's hard to accept that the club announced that they're going to get an expert in to help us get through it. What about getting an expert in to stop us getting into it in the first place? Because that surely would have been the obvious thing to do. If you're going to sign that many players, be right on top of it, be buttoned up to the extreme on it, right? So I don't think we can use the excuse that we've stumbled into it. I can only think it's one of two things. One, a deal didn't go through, or one or two deals didn't go through that were expected to get us out of it earlier. Or two, we were just arrogant enough to think we'd be well clear and we could take it and absorb it and we'd take it on the chin.
So
I'd like to think
where's the anger for you then? Is it with the club then?
Yeah, of course, because I think it was so blindingly obvious that we could fall foul of it. So therefore, do everything you can to make sure we don't. And now we're in a situation where we're going to likely be dragged into the relegation zone if it happens before the end of the season. I don't know how it's going to go. I mean, I think the club, if they're wise now, would accept the penalty before the end so we know what we're up against. Because if we leave it to the end of the season, that seems like a ridiculous situation. So it's very difficult for Nuno and the players. They've reacted well. I don't see any major impact from what I've seen from the performances so far to think it's got to them yet. But the penalty hasn't arrived yet, and the penalty might not arrive to the end of the season. I'm very frustrated because I think it was so like I mean, I'm sure Adam was watching us sign all those players, and like any supporter of other clubs would have gone, well, if they're not careful, they're going to fall foul of financial fair play. And it was so obvious to everybody in and outside the club. So why weren't we right on top of it? Why weren't we doing everything we can to prevent it? I don't know if we're ever going to get an explanation as to what happened there.
Well, the mitigating that they're claiming a little bit is the Brennan Johnson transfer,
Yeah,
aren't they?
yeah, but then you've got to weigh up. Like, what's it worth? You've got to be talking to the Premier League at that point and going, right, if we do delay, do we trip FFP? Yes or no? And if we do, we've got to weigh up, do we sell early to Brentford and get the money in and avoid the points deduction? Or do we hold on for a fee from Spurs, which might have been greater, which surely wasn't certain at that point? And it kind of makes sense as to why Brentford kept coming back. Because if you remember during that phase, they kept coming back with bids of around 30, 25, 30, 35. And I was thinking, why are they so persistent with a bid that we're never going to accept? Because it's obvious we wanted 40 plus. It makes me think that Brentford knew something, that Brentford, there was some kind of communication going on, and Brentford knew that they could come in with a low ball offer and probably get it because we were trying to avoid FFP. Maybe that was going on there because I never understood at the time why Brentford kept coming back time and time again and why they didn't switch their target to another player, given that they'd lost Tony. So that kind of makes sense now. So obviously someone at the club thought, no, we're going to hold on for the extra money. That's going to be worth it. If we take a penalty of points, we'll be well clear of relegation anyway. So it'll be fine. I don't know. But you've got to think that due diligence wasn't done or some process failed for us to fall into that the way we did when the supporters were told, no, we're on top of it, we're going to avoid it, which is what Nicholas Randall said. So, yeah, it's quite embarrassing, to be honest, because other fans of other clubs, people like Richard Keys just look at it and went, well, I told you so. And it's like,
Oh, that's
yeah,
an awful position to be in, mate.
yeah, to
That
be
really is bad.
at the mercy of Richard Keys, no one wants to be in that situation.
Adam, what's your thoughts on Forest and Everton from a neutral perspective? How are you feeling about the potential point deductions for these clubs?
It's hard to say, sort of a little bit like Mark has already illustrated. It's hard to say it's unfair because they have broken rules, and it's like the rules are in place I honestly think probably both Forest and Everton just didn't think that if they were going to be punished, I don't think they thought it was going to be a points deduction. And even then, I doubt they thought, at least in Everton's case, it was going to be 10 points. Who knows what kind of Forest's will be, but that kind of yardstick is there. So I think that's what a lot of people are already expecting. Yeah, I honestly think it was more a combination of naivety and arrogance that they just didn't think there was actually going to be a points deduction. And I think from that perspective, I obviously feel sorry for the fans, because they're at the whims of kind of club board members and ownership that are oftentimes kind of dismissive of fans' opinions in the first place, or kind of their perspectives in the first place. And then it's their arrogance and kind of negligence that has gotten them in a really, really difficult situation. And I suppose for Everton, there's the potential of 2 points deductions, which is obviously massive and terrible. But with the first one, their performances have been good enough that they're kind of not clear of relegation, but they are sort of at least in a good position to put up a fight. You say, if you look at Forest and they get a 10-point deduction now, they are in serious, serious trouble. And obviously, you can't kind of factor that in when you make the decision to hand out the punishment. It should be the same regardless if you're in 20th or if you're in like second. It shouldn't make any difference. But I think that kind of adds an extra element of sympathy from my perspective as a neutral in that situation.